Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we are going to be talking about Invest 91L that has recently developed in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, and we're going to be talking about the development chances of it and what impacts it will have to the mainland United States. Before we get started, however, be sure to like and subscribe with the notifications on because it definitely does help my channel grow, and we're going to get started here. So here is Invest 91L. It is sitting in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, otherwise known as the Bay of Campeche. It's about to cross into the main part of the Gulf of Mexico. It's moving pretty slow right now, only about a couple or a few miles an hour, but eventually it will make more of a north or northeasterly turn as it moves into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico and off the southeast coast, where we could see those development chances start to increase. So as you can see, through the next 2 days, we're not expecting it to develop at all over the next 2 days, but over the next 5 days, it has a 30% chance because upper level winds right now are very strong, as you're going to see a little later on in the video. But upper level winds, like aka wind shear, will start to disintegrate, meaning the storm could start developing in about 3, 4, 5 days or so. And we'll see. I think it's going to have two development chances. One in the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico, and if it doesn't develop then, it will have another chance of like its redemption, if you will, off the southeast coast, like off the coast of the Carolinas. So 30% chance of development. This has been named Invest 91L, and it has the potential to become our next named tropical storm. And if this storm were to be named, it were to be named Mindy, if it does get a name. So winds are still 25 miles an hour, 20 knots. Pressure's 1,011. Really hasn't changed for like the past day or two, honestly. It's pretty much been the same. If we look at the satellite imagery, you can see what I'm talking about, right? Look at this steady stream of high clouds, right? Because the upper level winds high up in the atmosphere and those high clouds are being pushed northwest to southeast. You got your low pressure or your disturbance sitting right there. It's really just getting sheared apart. And when you have a storm that's this young, it really just, it really hurts. Like if this was having to a category 5, maybe it would sustain a little bit, but not to a storm that's this young. Now the wind shear is actually bad for the Yucatan Peninsula because the low is sitting right about here, or the disturbance. So like normally like an organized disturbance would have, thunderstorms around the low, but because it's getting sheared from northwest to southeast, we're still seeing widespread thunderstorms, or at least very cold cloud tops, all right, over the Yucatan Peninsula, right? Because if there was no shear, all the thunderstorms would probably be out over the water, or at least most of them. But because of that shear, we're still seeing thunderstorms moving this way, all right? It may look like the storm is actually moving east, but in reality, it actually is pretty much moving northwest, very stationary motion. It's really hard to pick out a center, but there is some decent convection around the center, though. Okay, wind shear can't take that away, really. I mean, it can move the convection around, but dry air is what takes away the convection. All right, and you can see what I mean. Now, if we go back to the satellite, notice how the steady stream is right here, right? But if you go north of there, notice how the clouds and the cloud tops, or the convection, it's not moving all that much, right? Because there's less wind shear up there. As you can see right here, sorry, I already spoiled it earlier, but here it is. This is the upper level winds according to the European model. You can see at 250 millibars, you have all the stronger winds here, all right? You got your low sitting right about in here somewhere, so near the Bay of Campeche. All right, and the weaker upper level winds are in here. Now the question is, do those upper level winds stay weak, in the central Gulf? I mean, even in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, they're like low to moderate. All right, it's still but it's a lot weaker than it is out here, and waters are pretty warm. All right, now again, as we continue to move on in time, where is the low by this point? Is it here? Is it more out here? So according to the European model, at 11 p.m. on Tuesday, all right, the low really is nowhere to be seen, actually. All right, here it is in the southwestern Gulf. All right, and then it could move to the north and east. We're going to get into the models a little bit later. I just wanted to show you guys this so you could see the upper level winds, all right, and how they will weaken some, but as you can see, they will not weaken entirely. If they do weaken a bit more, obviously the storm will definitely get its act together for sure. And here's the cyclonic spin. There's Hurricane Larry over there. You can see it's got some decent spin, right? We've got some yellows and oranges on the vorticity scale. It's not too bad. And there actually is another wave that looks pretty healthy, similar vorticity. Well, National Hurricane Center hasn't pinpointed that one yet. But notice over here, though, it's not perfectly circular like Larry, right? You can see that's the example right there. If it was like perfectly, circular, symmetrical form, then it would definitely be a bit better to look at. But of course, remember, we do have some wind shear for right now, but that's not to say nothing can happen later, which is why we're going to show the models as well. All right. And look at Larry, by the way. I mean, very nice looking hurricane. A little dry air inside of the eye, which is why it looks a little ragged. There's the wave out there. I'll be watching that wave. National Hurricane Center hasn't really pinpointed out yet, but I will be keeping an eye on it for any development. But here's what we're talking about over here, 91L. And really, not much in the way of dry air. There is a little stationary front hanging out in the southeast. That could help them maybe pick up what could be potentially Mindy or 91L and kind of drag in a more northeasterly direction as opposed to just sitting there. And if we look at the heat content, now, like I talked about with, I think it was Fred and Ida were the two storms I mentioned this, right? That little blob and the little blip of very, very warm heat content, like the dark red is literally as high as you can go, like 150 on the heat content scale. If 91L does move over that, I think its chances of development increase by about 10 or 20%, in my opinion. Anyway, the Bay of Campeche is pretty warm, but there's not much, as you can see where I actually, because there's some darker colors, I'll change color here. You can see in the southwestern Gulf, or the Bay of Campeche, there's not much oceanic heat content. It's very warm, but there's not much heat content. As it moves farther north, though, into the central Gulf, it might tap into some more, deeper ocean water, and maybe, even if the wind shear is a little bit on the moderate side, if it starts to weaken, heat content gets a little stronger, we could see something form by the time it makes its apparent landfall on somewhere in the eastern and northern Gulf Coast. We'll see, because even off the coast of the Carolinas, right, we still got some moderate heat content, right? It's on the moderate scale, more than it does have right now. So that's why National Hurricane Center is saying, okay, this will have two chances at developing in the eastern Gulf and the southeast coast. Now, wind shear right now, as it appears, this is from Track to Tropics here. You can see the wind shear still strong in the Bay of Campeche, but look at the central and the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There's really no shear to be found. If that front does drape a little bit further south, a little bit of shear could build in. All right, but wind shear over the Gulf has been dropping 5 to 10 knots in the past 24 hours. So if they could just get out of where it's in right now, it could start developing in the central Gulf. Combining if that little spot that's right here with the high heat content and the low shear, we could really see something get going here in the near future. Now, one thing I haven't shown yet is, I'll use this, the sea surface temperatures, right? 85 where it's in right now. Again, this is the area where we have that very warm, high heat content. Of course, this is where pretty much around where the Gulf Stream is. All right, it's coming from the Caribbean. It's dispersing that heat content into this region, kind of rotates around and just sits there, which is why the heat content is always high in the central Gulf right there. And then it continues to flow on up the Gulf Stream. So if it does move over this, this warm current in here where I've circled in black, then we could definitely see some come together. All right, and also not only that, but the sea surface temperatures are even a degree or two warmer inside of here as well. And then they cool down a bit more, but still 84 plus the whole entire time. All right, and if it gets off when it gets off the southeast coast, right, here's the Gulf Stream again, sort of in this general zone, 85 degrees plus. I mean, when it gets off the coast, it might be in the low 80s, but mid 80s. All right, even all the way up as far north as Outer Banks. All right, on the Gulf Stream. So we'll definitely be watching this for development closely. I mean, especially now that it's starting to make it into a slightly better environment, but not yet. Now, waters are a degree or two cooler, courtesy of a major hurricane when Ida went through. That did drop obviously when a strong hurricane went through, kind of cooled the water a very little bit, but it's been rebounding a lot in terms of the sea surface temperatures. All right, so if we look here at some of the track guidance, all right, we got the 12Z data in here. You can see really not much agreement. They do bring it north. Really not too many models have put out a forecast on the system. I'm not sure if it's because if it's in its very early development stages and it's on the low end of the invest scale, meaning like it's an invest, but like it's not too concerning. But considering this region has been hammered recently, especially from New Orleans points eastbound, any tropical system of any magnitude would be something to look at. The European track guidance has a bit more in the way of track, but notice most of them just sit it over the Bay of Campeche, right, over the next couple of days, and eventually some of the more longer-term models do take it into the southeast and over the southeast coast. But of course, if it stays over land longer, then we're not going to see as much tropical development. But either way, as I will show you guys later, either way there will be an increase in moisture for sure. So most models, we have two models that make it a tropical storm. One barely does. But again, even so, wind strength I don't think will be the turning point with this system. I don't think that's what we're going to be focusing on. I think we're going to focus on the moisture, and of course, the thunder and lightning can also be just as dangerous. And I'm sure there could be some waves, but again, waves are related to wind, and wind won't be a big issue with this storm. If we look at, but of course, rip currents too. But if we look at the ship's diagnostics message, right, from the GFS version of it, you can see there is a brief period of time where shear does start to come down a little bit, maybe into the 20s, low 20s, and upper teens in terms of wind shear and knots. But then according to this, it does go back up again. Also, notice the heat content, 56, 40, right, up near 60. So heat content will go up. Storm speed, they keep it about a couple of miles an hour, even almost stationary for the next 3 or 4 days. Then after 5 days, this is when it starts moving into, the Gulf and crossing it over the southeast coast. Also, notice the water temperatures get up up above 30, closer to 31 Celsius. So water temperatures will be warming up. So things are going to be getting better for the system. I think we're going to need to wait about 3 or 4 days. Just wanted to get like a forecast out on it now, just to show you guys what it could become in the near future. All right, the exciting part. We're going to get into some of the modeling now. We got the 3 main global models. Of course, over the next couple of days, we get more of the mesoscale short-term models in there. But I want to stick to the global models for now, the GFS, Canadian, and European. If we look at the GFS, first of all, they have something spinning up here. This is by 8 p.m. Wednesday. They have something forming in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. It's not too strong, all right, but there is some cyclonic vorticity signature indicated right there in the northeastern Gulf. This is about 8 p.m. Wednesday. Then it crosses into the southeast, off the southeast coast by very early Friday morning. All right, so this won't be moving too fast, probably moving at about an average speed, and then sitting off the southeast coast still by like early Saturday morning. All right, and then eventually we'll get kicked out to sea once the upper level winds pick it up, jet stream, cold front, whatever it may be. Something will pick it up eventually and toss it out to sea. At least that's what the GFS version does say. The Canadian model, here we have the CMC, the GEM, all right, has many names. But here's a Canadian model, and you can see moving to the north, all right, now there it is. Now remember, GFS at the same time here, which was, I believe, Wednesday night. All right, so Canadian has something up here, maybe moving west, and then kind of just like getting yeeted to the east, right, kind of getting like picked up and tossed. Where the GFS at the same time had it right about here. So models aren't really agreeing, and really because there's not much in the steering pattern until later, it's really hard for if there was a clear steering pattern, the models would probably agree more. But what the Canadian model does have is a more bona fide system, but this is until Friday 8 p.m. You can see a lot more darker reds on the signatures. Definitely a stronger system. This will probably, from looking at this looks like a probably like a mid-grade tropical storm, or on that end. And then crossing into the southeast coast, it does. Now then they have it weakening, maybe becoming a frontal system. They actually have a piece of it drifting back to the west. If the front just sits there, there's really not much in the way of steering current. It could just sit along the front. But eventually upper level winds could take over. But the Canadian doesn't say that, because then they just have whatever's left of the system going back west. All right, so again, a lot of model disagreements, all right, for right now. And the European model, pretty similar to the GFS it has been. They definitely do have some in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, but this is Thursday morning. I think GFS had something there, what was it, Wednesday night? So really not too much disagreement on the timing and location. GFS had it back here on Wednesday night. So GFS and Euro are pretty similar. Like the GFS, the Euro takes it off the southeasterly coast. All right, and this is, every click is 24 hours, by the way. So not moving too fast. I mean, Saturday morning, it's offshore. But again, we're going to get updates on the system. And one thing I do want to stress for sure, or like 99% sure, is that there's going to be an influx of moisture. All right, you can see the darker greens in this area. Some areas in here do not need the moisture. Some that could go all the way up into South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, even in southern Delmarva. And again, even if you don't get rain, it will still be pretty, muggy, right? The relative humidities will be pretty high. But the good news is, once that storm gets out of here, high pressure could settle into the north Friday afternoon, and we could see the more northerly flow, less humidity. And if you live on the Smoky Mountains or the Appalachians, you know that when a high pressure is in this position, you know that the winds can go like down slope the mountains like this, and it could make a beautiful day in places like Asheville, North Carolina, Blairsville, Georgia, even Roanoke. Can be some pretty beautiful days when you got that perfect northeasterly wind. So if that high does build in, could be a beautiful day. All right, looking at the sea surface temperatures at that same time, look at this. This is like the warmest part of the day, and parts of the mountains in North Carolina there, like in the upper 70s. All right, so it looks like a pretty comfortable day. All right, surface temperature you can see right there is 75 at the bottom of your screen. So, and that's at the warmest part of the day. So, I mean, once the system gets by, we will have to deal with another influx of moisture, but after that, it should get pretty comfortable, hopefully. So, stay tuned for updates on the system. We'll be updating on Larry, of course, and maybe even something behind that. We'll be watching Larry impacts potentially for Bermuda, even for St. John's and Newfoundland. So we'll be watching this closely. So thank you guys for watching. I am the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.